In the darkest winter of World War II, amidst the crumbling ruins of a city named after Stalin himself, history was rewritten. Stalingrad was more than just a battle. It was a symbol of resistance, resilience, and redemption. This is the story of how the Soviets turned the tide against Hitler's seemingly unstoppable war machine and changed the course of history. Prelude to the battle. By the summer of 1942, Hitler's forces were at the peak of their power. Operation Barbarossa, launched in 1941, had pushed deep into Soviet territory. Cities fell one by one, and the Red Army seemed incapable of stopping the relentless German advance. Amidst this chaos, the city of Stalingrad became Hitler's next target. Why? Because Stalingrad wasn't just a city, it was a prize. Strategically located on the Volga River, Stalingrad was a key industrial hub and a gateway to the rich oil fields of the Caucasus. Controlling it meant crippling Soviet logistics and fueling the German war machine. For Stalin, losing the city that bore his name was unthinkable. As German armies advanced, Stalin issued Order No. 227, not a step back. The Soviet Union braced itself for one of the most brutal confrontations in military history. The German advance. In August 1942, the German Sixth Army, led by General Friedrich Paulus, began its push towards Stalingrad. Supported by Luftwaffe bombers, the advance was swift and devastating. The city was turned into rubble even before the first German soldiers set foot in it. Entire neighborhoods were obliterated. Tens of thousands of civilians were killed, and those who remained were forced to dig trenches or fight alongside the Soviet defenders. For Hitler, Stalingrad was not just a military objective. It was a propaganda war against Stalin himself. But the Soviets were determined to hold their ground. General Vasily Chukov, commander of the 62nd Army, declared, "We will defend the city or die trying." His forces turned every street, building, and sewer into a battlefield. The battle for the city. By September 1942, the battle for Stalingrad had devolved into savage urban warfare. The city's rubble created a nightmarish landscape where tanks were ineffective and soldiers fought hand-to-hand. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg-Rat warfare. Soviet snipers like Vasily Zaitsev became legends, picking off German officers from concealed positions. Pavlov's house, defended by Sergeant Yakov Pavlov and his men, became a symbol of Soviet tenacity, holding out for months against relentless attacks. As winter set in, the already dire conditions worsened. Temperatures plummeted and supplies ran low. For the German soldiers, the cold was as deadly as the Soviet bullets. Despite these hardships, Hitler demanded that Paulus capture the city at all costs. Meanwhile, the Soviet war effort was fueled by the resilience of its people. Women worked tirelessly in factories, producing weapons and ammunition, while civilians dug trenches and fortified defenses. The entire nation was mobilized for the fight. The Soviet counteroffensive. While the Germans poured their resources into Stalingrad, the Soviets were preparing a bold counteroffensive. Operation Uranus, launched in November 1942, aimed to encircle the German Sixth Army by targeting its weaker flanks, held by Romanian and Hungarian forces. The attack was a masterstroke of strategy. Within days, Soviet forces had broken through the Axis lines and surrounded Stalingrad. Over 300,000 German and Axis soldiers were trapped in a massive pocket with no escape. Hitler, obsessed with the symbolic value of Stalingrad, refused to allow Paulus to retreat. He ordered the Luftwaffe to airlift supplies to the encircled troops, but this effort fell woefully short. The harsh winter and Soviet anti-aircraft fire made resupply missions nearly impossible. The fall of Stalingrad. By January 1943, the situation was hopeless. Soviet forces tightened their grip, launching a final assault on the city. General Paulus, promoted to field marshal by Hitler in a futile attempt to ensure he would fight to the death, chose to surrender instead. On February 2, 1943, the last remnants of the German Sixth Army laid down their arms. Over 90,000 German soldiers were taken prisoner, including Paulus himself. It was the first time in history that a German field marshal had surrendered. The aftermath and legacy. Stalingrad lay in ruins, a testament to the brutality of war. Over 2 million people, soldiers and civilians alike, had been killed, wounded, or captured. The city's reconstruction would take years, but its spirit had never been broken. As we remember the heroes of Stalingrad, let us honor their courage and sacrifice. Their story reminds us that in the face of overwhelming odds, determination and unity can achieve the impossible.